Hi. Usually they say the afternoon sessions are the terrible sessions. After a long lunch, everyone is fall asleep. I hope my fellow panelists have kept you awake. I'm going to try to make this interesting as much as possible. The organizers asked me to speak about the urban setting in Malaysia and also specifically about Georgetown's transformation. So I'm going to use this opportunity to share with you. Oops. Okay, sorry. So I think we all know this is a fact. I think this is in 2008, The Economist had a famous cover that said the world goes to town. And it's no different in Malaysia. This is the urbanization rate in Malaysia. As you can see, we have grown from 11 to 28 in close to about 60 years. But in the last 40 years, we have tripled that number. So urbanization is so intense in Malaysia as Malaysia rapidly grows. And the country acknowledges this as a matter of fact, that what he calls cities are going to become the drivers of growth in the country. So there's the 10th plan of Malaysia clearly articulates a strategy about how Malaysia is going to unlock the potential of cities. It looks at cities as a key driver, and also in the sense that you got to think differently about cities. And I think this morning people talked about live, work, play, and it has become a very central thrust. And the new paradigm of city making, for the first time, I think a national plan that talks about how do you design cities in a new framework, thinking about city design, transport, environment, governance. There's a new way to think about in the 21st century. Now, Malaysia's urbanization is something very interesting. The Malay Peninsula has been very pivotal all through history. As a result, it's been the trade route between India and China. It's always been the heart of the global economy. And again, with the rise of India and China, this Malay Peninsula is becoming an important trade route. So what we decided was to coin a term called the Malacca Straits Diagonal. Now, this is something that I did my fellow Eisenhower colleague, Dr. Alfonso Veguera. We decided to look at this urban pattern that exists here, whereby we decided to say that the space between Penang to Singapore is an intense space, whereby there are over 16 million people in this Malacca Straits Diagonal. Probably more than 50% of the GDP of this region is centered around this particular node. As you can see, the kind of connectivity that exists, the infrastructure, and in the future, with the advent of high-speed rail, these spaces will be interconnected. Today, it takes a long time to travel on road or rail, but with high-speed rail, now the spaces will get interconnected. I think over the course of today and on Saturday, you will be hearing different parts of the story of Malaysia. I'm going to use this opportunity to share the work which I do, which is Penang as a case study about how do you put all of these policies into practice. The easy part is about always writing policies and producing books. Now, as most of you know, Penang is well known for its food culture, and I think this is a matter of fact. It gets well recognized. It's no different. Penang is highly urbanized, as you can see, the rate of urbanization in Malaysia. It has transformed from a British port city, just like Singapore, on the Straits of Malacca. It has transformed to become an industrial city, a high-tech manufacturing hub, where you have a huge industrial cluster. Most of them came for labor and stayed for talent, so the industries have grown from low-cost manufacturing into high-value-added services. Now the question becomes, in the port city we had an compact urban form. In an industrial city we transformed to become an urban sprawl, and we became very much a motorcar city. The question becomes, as we move up the value chain, what kind of city will we be? So this is a process that we have been going through the last couple of years to think about what the future means for Penang. The reality is that this is where we start from. The kind of headlines that you see, it's becoming a concrete jungle, an island that's losing its charm. More vehicles than people. I think all over the world, as affluence increases, you find that this is becoming a major problem. Not only that, urban sustainability is a very, core challenge. Temperatures have risen significantly over this period. We consume twice the amount of water than what Singapore consumes. Singapore is twice the size of Penang, and probably 3 times the size of population. So we articulate a new way of thinking in a sense that for Penang to be successful, it needs to have a new model of spatial framework. Now, how do you deal with moving from an urban sprawl into a more polycentric model of development? And we argue the case for Penang, it's about getting the three cycles of cities, people, and the economy together. I think world over, we know this as a matter of fact. People are choosing the cities that they want to be in, and then and they then become the key engines of growth. In an age where people are competing for talent, making your cities wonderful and beautiful and livable and so on is no longer a choice, it's a must if you really want to compete in the global economy. So if you get your cities right, you get your people, then you build the economy that you desire. For Penang, that means it has to build on the distinctiveness of Penang. It has to build on the culture and identity of Penang. A city that promotes new ideas of urban mobility for all, new ways of thinking about mobility. You know, the traditional sense, we think always about roads and cars and maybe even rail. A city with a place for all, you know, young and the old, the poor, and a city that retains rich cultural heritage, urban form, and diversity. I think my colleague just now highlighted the importance of ensuring the historical continuity, managing your historical fabric in a manner that will be a key catalyst towards future growth. Now, as like any transformation, there's always a need for vision, and this is a vision that we have put in, and eventually it comes to one phrase: habitat of choice, a sticky space. Now, how do you do that? It's very easy. So we had to rethink in a way, in the sense that how does Penang develop? There was over-concentration onto the island. Penang has got an island and a mainland, so we had to relook at the planning, relook at how do you plan with the environment. This was the kind of vision that we have put in place. It's a tall order, but we had to think big. As I said, we're moving to a polycentric development model, whereby you're going to have multiple nodes, so that each of these areas starts specializing and creating distinctiveness. Now, the journey has already begun in Penang, whereby the hard infrastructure part, the easiest part the government can do, get your bridges right, put the roads in, and probably try to introduce public transport. We are also trying to ensure that it takes into account the environment. Local participation is very central in terms of decision making. Now, there's some things that we also try to do that's not outside outside the realm of normal things, in a sense that we try to encourage citizens' participation and so on. At the same time, a lot more bottom-up work. So you find that in Penang, the recycling rates have probably the highest in the country, with about 25% recycling rate. We're targeting to go to 50 by 2020. We have banned plastics, we have banned styrofoams. And I think the environment agenda has become very central. Now, I wanted to share with you a case study about, I know my colleague here talked about how governments, they didn't depend on government, but I represent a government-owned entity, and we had the benefit of being given an opportunity to put in place a grants program, whereby the government decided, instead of using the normal channels of government to implement an urban regeneration program, they decided to give it to us, and we used it as a tool towards how can you use grants as a tool towards urban regen. And in a sense that we saw that grants can become a catalyst and it can become a sweetener. So we took the approach that we should find ways that we can actually stimulate private sector participation. So Think City is an entity dedicated for this work, providing urban policy thinking, implementing innovation and drive urban regen. And this is what we do: physical conservation, cultural mapping, capacity building, and this is the program. Now, since we started over the last 4 years, we have about close to over 200 projects. Over 120 has been completed in various areas. It's spread out all across the historic city, or the UNESCO historic city in Georgetown. Now, this is the principles that we have used in terms of how we went about putting this together. And as usual, we always had the baselines, concept plans, big things around large-scale transformation, ideas around large-scale transformation, waterfront. But at the same time, we adopted in saying that how do you use adaptive reuse of these buildings? Now, a lot of these buildings now have been restored. This is an example of one of those buildings that has gone from a medicinal hall that was established 200 over years ago, that is now transformed to become a boutique hotel, but incorporating the old Chinese medicine system. Ensuring inclusiveness, not only the owners, but ensuring that gentrification is managed, because especially when you try to restore buildings, the city gentrifies. How do you ensure inclusiveness? This is the first time when you find that the property owners and the existing tenants sit side by side and trying to figure out how do they now find a win-win partnership. So we had to broker this kind of discussions, and it was very tough in the sense that it took nearly 18 months for the project to take off. because you had to get agreement. And finally, we made it make through. They have certainty of tenancy. They, the owners of the property, decide to upgrade. The tenants themselves also invest to upgrade, and we decided to top up. We look at intangible heritage is very important, celebrating your city, celebrating the people who make your city interesting. So we give awards. Sustainability, greening, the idea of improving the green environment. We have put together a plan. So, I think world over cycling has made a big comeback. It's no different in Georgetown, and we see this as a big trend and that's emerging. Creativity, innovation. How do you use? Now, this was a market building in this heart of the historic precinct, and this is the project that's now being implemented. We had to introduce multi-story car parks while ensuring the building had adaptive use, regenerate the area and so on. At the same time, ensuring that is compliant to this green designs. So it can be done. Festivals, we have created this thing called the Georgetown Festival. Culture and arts has become a celebrated thing. I think this has got spectacular success now. Importantly, it's about building partnerships. I think in a sense that none of this thing can happen. It has to be a partnership across government, private sector, civil society, building owners, and so on. This is one scheme where we decided to get hold of all the major property owners in a central business district to come together and say, look, guys, you are the seat of power, but all of the whole area is on a decline. Why don't you come together and form a business improvement district? You invest to upgrade together with government. And that project is now kicked off. It's in motion. Some of the ideas of change that we are proposing. Not only limited to businesses, we also got communities together. We talk about community-led initiative, community improvement programs. This is a district in Little India. We got hold of this. We got hold of these traders on the street, come to the office, plan, identify what improvements you want, and then put improvement programs on the ground. And this is currently being done. Public engagement. I think we spoke about this today. This is in action today. I think how we go about doing public engagement. This is interesting. This is a situation where we wanted to organize a thieves market, something that is seen illegal on the boundaries of illegality. Now, how do you get them also to be organized? They also have a space in a city. Now, all of this is done in partnership. Again, the idea that you do not need to work alone. You can work with local people, local international partners. The question of how do you want to broker a dialogue? Now, this is the kind of outcomes that we have achieved. For every dollar that we have put in, we have been able to generate more than 6 ringgits in terms of co-investments. And kind of headlines that we have seen, ECA ranks Georgetown as the number 8 livable city. That obviously unlike Singapore. Now, what lessons do we learn from Georgetown? Competition definitely is between cities. We all know that everyone is competing for technology and talent and capital. But we all know that we can't trade our geography, we can't trade our identity, and we can't trade our natural assets. Now, how do you take advantage of it? How do you unlock your potential? Livability is key in the competition. It's key in competition for talent. However, it has to be a more plan-led as approach to a market-based solution. Collaboration is key. Grants as an incentive has a role in urban regeneration, requires hand-holding and from design to implementation. This requires institutions tailored for the 21st century. I think we need to really rethink about institutions if you really want to move the urban agenda. Spatial autonomy in Malaysia is very federal. I think that's what the Chief Minister said. It's very centralized planning. Local level accountability, innovative solutions, sustainability, not multicultural but intercultural. You had to go beyond. Spatially blind policies is important, that you ensure that all your urban areas have got good education, good healthcare, good services, good amenities. Incentives to enable not only urban expansion. A lot of times we focus about new cities, new areas. We forget about regenerating. Higher standards and better design. I think someone mentioned that all we think about is glass and concrete. We forget about how the beautiful cities of the past were built. We no longer build them, but though we desire those. And obviously continuous monitoring. Thank you.